Jumping back into the action now on the Chip Shot Football podcast to recap our last game. I had to throw this last recap in here just because I thought this game was pretty significant, and it again sort of airs on the side of the fact that this NFC is so unpredictable, so just very balanced from some of the fringe teams to some of the quote unquote favorites to win the NFC. I think it's very even up until now, and I think this game was a perfect example of that because, like the title says, the Seahawks get back into the win column. They have a big 34-14 win over the Falcons, a game that it was funny when I looked back on it. I labeled and predicted this game to go to the Atlanta Falcons because I said the Falcons would win because they were playing clean football and that they knew exactly what they were doing. And, it turned out to be the complete opposite because in terms of clean and sloppiness that the Falcons showed, the Falcons did not play up to those standards, obviously, by their own doing. And also credit to Seattle's defense for, basically saying enough is enough after their last three games and how poorly they played. They showed up in Atlanta and they really stuck it to the Falcons because not only were the Falcons really kind of thrown off by a lot of credit to the Seahawks defense, but also there was a lot of penalties, a lot of sloppiness that happened from their own doing, like I said. So that was one thing, quite the opposite of what I predicted for the Falcons. So I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, the Seahawks stop a three-game losing streak to go to 4-3, while the Falcons also go to 4-3, and they put an end to their own three-game winning streak that they were on. 14 points also in this game by the Falcons, where they were averaging 37 points in their last two games. So again, it says a lot about the Falcons and how just poor they were on the day, but also the Seahawks defense because they were giving up a lot of points also in their last couple games. So for them to only give up 14 is a huge win for them going forward. And looking at the game a little bit closer and just how it all broke down, the Seahawks came out a bit sharper in the first half, in my opinion. They took the 3-0 lead on their first drive, and then Atlanta had a chance to tie it, but Younghoe Koo missed a field goal, and like it usually happens, right, when you miss an opportunity like that, right after that, the Seahawks drive after that and score a touchdown, now taking a 10-0 lead. And luckily for the Falcons, they were able to respond on their next drive and keep it close, 10-7, but Seattle ended the half as perfectly as you would have hoped because they chewed out the clock and they ended up scoring a touchdown there before the end of the first half, going into the halftime period 17-7 over the Atlanta Falcons on the road. And still 10-point deficit, not that big of a deal when you're playing at home if you're the Falcons, but after that, the Falcons closed the gap once again with a touchdown to start the second half, and we're back to a 3-point game, 17-14. It was early in the second half, but shout out to the Seahawks offense as well for responding yet again with Geno throwing a touchdown pass to Kenneth Walker and again going up to 10 points, 24-14. Then Atlanta, their attempts were finalized after the strip sack fumble return for a touchdown by the Seattle Seahawks defense, and at that point, that's a huge haymaker sort of blow to take at that point in the game because the Falcons were again down 10 points, and they're thinking, on this drive we could go back, score another touchdown, and respond yet again, but because the defense stepped up and they were able to get that turnover, not only that turnover, but return it all the way back for a touchdown, it really sucks the air out of that entire stadium. So at that point, they're up 31-14 after that fumble recovery for a touchdown. I want to say Boye Mafe, I believe that's his name, stripped it from Kirk Cousins and got the sack. And the other defensive lineman, Hall, is his last name. He returned it for a touchdown. So that was great to see. And after that, Kirk Cousins threw two more interceptions after that, trying to mount a comeback, trying to score points quickly. He threw a touchdown on the following drive and also the other drive right after that. So the Falcons finish with 3 turnovers on the day overall. And looking at some of the performances from this game and the stats also just overall for both teams. You look at the game that each of them have, starting with the Seahawks. Geno Smith threw for 270 yards, 2 touchdowns, was only sacked once, and I believe this is the lowest amount of passing yards he's had in the entire 2024 season. So that if I told you that Geno was going to throw 270 yards or throw the least amount that he's had all year, you probably would have said that they lost this game. Other than the fact that their first game he threw 171 yards, he didn't throw for that many yards in this game. And I think, like I was preaching before, I think it was last week where I said that this Seahawks team, their margin of error is so small that because they don't really run the ball well and that their running defense isn't very great either, the fact that you throw it so much with Geno, you can't afford to turn it over as much as they have been doing leading up into this game, because you say you turn the ball over, right, and the other team scores off of it. Now you feel like you have to catch up, and maybe you overcompensate, you throw too much, you don't really become a balanced offense, and you end up suffering from it because you become one-dimensional and things like that. You could throw more interceptions just out of the fact that you're so urgent to tie the game and kind of rectify your mistake. It kind of leads to that, and I thought that overall they had better balance in this game. Kenneth Walker ran for 69 yards. Also, he got involved in the passing game because he had 24 yards receiving and another touchdown as well on his birthday, nonetheless. So he had a great day. He balled out. DK Metcalf added to it with 4 receptions and 99 yards and another touchdown as well for him, but he did leave with a sprained MCL, so he is considered week to week going forward for the Seahawks. And the Falcons, on the other end, like I said, not their cleanest game. Kirk Cousins had 232 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. He was also sacked 3 times. Bijan Robinson had a solid game, 21 carries for 103 yards and a touchdown. And Kyle Pitts arguably had the best game of his season with 7 receptions and 65 yards. The tie for the most receptions he's had all year, and just a little bit under the most yards he's had all year. So he had a prominent game, but it wasn't for much because the Falcons only scored 14 points. So it was great performance individually. They were able to get into the red zone a couple times, but also some other times it just really didn't go their way because of their own doing, like I said. And one of the things that stood out was the penalties, because the sloppiness went just beyond the turnovers, right? The turnovers you just can't have happen to you in a game like this, especially when you're riding on a high wave and the Seahawks are probably coming in with not that much hope to beat the Falcons on the road. Still, when you give up the ball so freely and you turn it over 3 times in that game, it's really hard to win in the NFL when you're just giving the opposing team the ball back, and also when you're shooting yourself in the foot, because the Seahawks had 5 penalties for 42 yards in this game, and the Falcons had 9 penalties for 72 yards as well. And on top of the amount of giveaways that they had, that's not winning football. And it doesn't really matter who the opposing team is, other than, I don't know, maybe the worst team in the league. Most teams, if you give them those opportunities and also you hurt yourself with that many penalties, it's going to be a closer game than most people expect. So that was really the biggest thing that I took away from it, because other than the turnovers and the penalties, the Falcons, you would have thought, won this game because they had more plays, they had more total yards in this game, and they had more time of possession. But again, it's the situational type of football moments where you force an errant pass, you get strip sacked, you throw another interception, things like that, and the opposing team is flying all over the field with their defense, is feeling very confident, because like we've talked about before, when these defenses play with a lead, they just pin their ears back and they just run at the quarterback. They're not even thinking about anything to do with coverage or anything like that. So this this developed perfectly in a game for the Seahawks to win, and they needed it more, in my opinion, because they were really snowballing there in terms of the losses that were beginning to pile up, and also the fact that the 49ers had lost and now they dropped to 3-4. The Seahawks are sitting at the top of the NFC West yet again with a winning record, so they needed this game more. I'm not like completely off the Falcons after a loss like this. I just feel like they just had a pretty rough day, a pretty sloppy day. So I think that'll get corrected. I like their offense a lot, and obviously I'm a big fan of Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons. So they're going to be fine, especially with the injuries to the Bucks. They're going to be playing them this week, so they should get back to winning. But this was a big win for the Seahawks, so I had to make sure I gave them some love and I shouted them out in today's episode. But now, I promise, we are officially done with Week 7. Now we're going to look ahead to Week 8 and start talking about Sunday Night Football. Still a few days away, but it's a big one on Sunday Night Football between the Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers. Who needs to win this game more? And also we're going to go through our predictions, the matchups, and all the things like that in our typical preview. So we'll be right back with that segment and also the conclusion of today's show.